Hey team, welcome back. Dave here. And I want to just take a couple minutes to talk about executive presence. Now, why? Why spend time on executive presence? Well, I've seen a pattern come up with lots of my clients, typically female clients, and sometimes female clients of color, that they're getting the feedback that they need to have more executive presence. And they end up feeling a little lost. What does that mean? What does it look like to have executive presence? And often the feedback they're getting is something along the lines of be more authoritative, be more assertive. You need to look a certain way. You need to be wearing the right clothes, a jacket, if you will. What actually makes people a compelling executive presence? When we push everything else aside, we push back the edifice of what clothes are you wearing? How is your hair done? What we're really talking about is, does that leader show up in an authentic and often vulnerable and real way? I want you to take a minute and think about the executives that you've worked with or been around, and think about the ones who are most compelling. Think about the ones who had a lasting impact. And as you start to consider them, I want you to really look at, was it their clothes and their assertiveness that stood out to you? Or was it that they showed up as themselves, authentically as themselves, in that executive role, right? They weren't being an executive. They were being themselves in the role of an executive. Now, another way to think about this is that executive presence, if it's about authentic presence, then really what it's about is you presence. And each of the clients that I've worked with on building their executive presence, our work was actually, how do you show up in that room, in that role as you, fully comfortable, confident, and clear in who you are and what your gifts and talents are? Because that is what is compelling presence. When people step into a space as themselves and fully own it, it really shifts how we experience them. And so if you're trying to dial in on executive presence, I want you to give yourself a break, to give yourself some kindness, and roll it back to say, how do I want to show up as me? If I showed up in a candid, authentic way, what might that look like? Because part of what I work with clients to do is find sustainable ways to show up in these executive roles. And you can't sustainably show up as a persona, as something that you aren't. You can do it for a while, but eventually you will get hollowed out and exhausted and burned out. Why? Because you're performing a thing. You're doing a thing instead of being yourself. And that's always going to take more energy, more emotional effort, and it's never going to feel as real or meaningful to you. So there's certainly a strategy out there for some folks to show up and perform this executive role in a way that feels like that's what people are asking from them. But I want to challenge you if that's the notion you hold. I want you to really consider what difference it would make if you could show up as yourself in an authentic, sincere, candid way, and what work you actually might be able to get done. Now, I say that not unaware of the systematic and social barriers that might be in place for lots of you. I've seen it with the clients I work with, and it breaks my heart to see it unfold for them. And yet, if we're looking to create better workplaces, better functioning teams, better performing organizations, we cannot get there if we're all pretending. So do yourself a favor and find ways to pretend less, to show up as you presence and not persona presence. Anyway, a few thoughts on executive presence. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked it, subscribe and hit the like button. Cheers.